So you find that in this particular conflict, the dominant groups are the Nuer and the Dinka tribes. There is also the Morobi tribe. Now, what happens is that the challenges Southern Sudan is facing now is simply a manifestation of unresolved issues.
Yeah.
Before the agreement, before the Nairobi Accords, and then what they also later on agreed after independence. Because you see, conflict is in stages.
Yeah.
Remember, there were many different groups fighting the Khartoum government. The group of the late Garang only emerged as the dominant group. But there are other groups.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Hello, our esteemed viewers. My name is Timothy Aine, and this is the Policy Digest of the Center for Policy Analysis. As you can see, this is not a regular face on your screens. I'm sitting in for Joseph Tahinduka. Today we are going to delve into an engaging discussion about the civil unrest, and the emerging conflicts within the greater parts of the Great Lakes region, but also covering it and comparing it to the Horn. And to be so much exact, we are going to see the frameworks of the security and the international but both regional integration systems, whether they have helped in this combating of peace, security, resolution, and migration. And interestingly, my guest today is Dr. Tolit Charles Atia. A brief biography of my guest today is he has done work around governance and human rights initiatives based in two countries. That is, for Uganda, he has been based in Gulu and Kampala, and for Nairobi, he has been in Kenya. Atia also currently works as a researcher in conflict and politics within the Great Lakes region at Atia and Associates Company Limited. He also leads the security research team at Nkumba University. Dr. Tolit has a vast experience in migration, security, and governance, a platform he has used to advocate for better migration policy in order to realize the objectives of the Compact for Migration. Dr. Tolit, welcome to the Center for Policy Analysis, but also to the Policy Digest in particular.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. It is my pleasure to be able to contribute to this very pertinent subject, a subject of peace and security in our region.
Yeah, Doctor, let's begin with the South Sudan question. After a long struggle, a civil war that was spearheaded by the late Dr. John Garang, who later passed on, South Sudan got independence after that struggle on the 9th of July 2011. after 2 years, in 2013, South Sudan faced a civil war. I want you to give us the historical background to that and explain to our viewers what that means and what it meant then. Yeah, we can start from there.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much for that question. Southern Sudan and Sudan today are a pretty much part of the geographical location of Eastern Africa and the Horn. One way to look at Sudan and be able to understand the conflict nexus that has built around it over years would be to start by looking at it from the colonial time, particularly. But probably that would also be going too far. But it is important to know that one of the main features in terms of geopolitics that holds the glue between, say, Uganda, East Africa, and the Sudans is, for instance, the River Nile. You know, Uganda, for instance, has come to be known as the source of the River Nile, and the River Nile runs from here through southern Sudan, through Sudan, and up to Egypt. Many scholars today, especially those that address their minds to peace and security, will tell you that probably the next wars that we are likely to witness are wars arising from disagreement around water or water bodies. Now, suffice to say that other than water, and like you correctly pointed out, there is a history of conflict in Sudan. And that is the South versus the North. Something that came to its climax with the agreement of the two sides, particularly Southern Sudan, fought what you'd call a war of secession. It's largely Christian, and I pointed out that this relates to our colonial legacies, and the North is predominantly Muslim. So after a bitter war that saw millions displaced for many years, a revolution that was led by the late Abyei Garang sees Southern Sudan get independence in 2010. Most of the discussions that led to that independence was as a result of the peace talks in Nairobi. What has come to be known as the Nairobi Accord. It is important at this stage to know that, yes, the South managed to get independence or secede, but it was not without problems.
That's critical.
We know that as a result of that war, South Sudan or natives of Southern Sudan exported refugees over years, because the war we are talking about is a war that started in the early 60s. I think the first shots were shot in 1963. So today it is a war, by 2010, it is a war that had probably lasted close to 40 years plus.
Yeah.
So in terms of conflict resolution theory, peace building theory, it has been proved that for a war that takes that long, you probably need double the time to recover.
What an interesting theory, but also to maybe to bring it to closer to recent history. From let us get to 2013 and onwards. Because I believe the Nairobi Agreement, to a certain extent, gave us solutions of things like that included like disarmament, but still the two factions that are fighting right now, I think this is also still a major issue within the two factions. So how do we see peace, as a component of people that have faced that so much time of unrest in Sudan?
Yeah, you raise an interesting point, and I'll tell you that as we have this discussion, one of our biggest interests would be to find out what are actually the push factors, what we call push factors. What is it that makes this war remain unrelenting? Why can't this war end? And for me, arising from the work I've done around this war and related conflicts in the region, there are about three key things. One of the most important of them is the issue of governance. And that is why I tried to labor to put a context to this conflict. Part of the reason that we are having a conflict that does not seem to end is that also both those who are attempting to give solutions and even those who are participating in this conflict, particularly the young people. Because you see, when you're talking about war, you're talking about conflict, sometimes we don't break down the images. What that simply means is that there are people who are fighting, there are people holding guns. Who are these people? These are young people. Because the demographics, the global demographics show you that largely in Africa, we have a very young population. And particularly in East Africa and Uganda, having the youngest population in the world.
Yeah.
Our neighbors equally have young people. So one category of people who are really at stake in realizing peace and security are young people, because they are the ones who are recruited, they are the actors, they are the primary commanders. If we cannot get that context correct, and then if we cannot get the historical facts right, then we have a problem. Now, quickly, when South Sudan gets independence, there were a number of unresolved questions. One of the key questions which was unresolved was the Abyei question. Now, what is Abyei? Abyei is a particular place, geographical place or location, where most of the petroleum production activities are taking place. Now, what is interesting and what complicates and makes the Sudan-Juba Peace Accord a complicated one is that there are claims on either side. Now, because Southern Sudan was an underdog, so to speak, in that conflict, much of Southern Sudan has remained underdeveloped, particularly in terms of infrastructure development. Sudan, Khartoum, took advantage of this situation at the time of the conflict and built most of the petroleum infrastructure
refineries
on the Sudan side. That is in terms of infrastructure. But they also went ahead and they constructed a financial infrastructure, which also put them in an advantage, and they have continued to take advantage of that. Okay? So, this is a conflict between Sudan Juba and Sudan Khartoum. But you have neighbors.
But before we get to the two conflicting countries, I want us to also discuss the internal conflict in and of itself, where we have the two factions still that are at war. The other day, I could say the vice president has been under arrest. His Excellency Riek Machar. Where is this coming from? We thought anyone would think that the leadership, because you pointed out governance in Sudan would have, in South Sudan would have known better by this time, but they seem not to be getting it, so to speak.
Yeah, they don't seem to be getting it, and they will not get it until we go to correctly understand the histories. You see, what we call nation states today is a very new creation. This only emerged after 1864. Out of the Vienna Convention. But what are nations? Because there are two words there: nation, states. So after Vienna, what was new is the concept of the state. And we know that the concept of the state, that conference, was basically a conference that came at what you'd call the fall of the colonial epoch. So whoever was busy enriching themselves in the colonial enterprise, which today we now know was actually a business concept, through the religious lens, we are told they came as they brought the Bible, they came as saviors, they came, and all this hogwash.
But it already revolved around
what really translates that there was that enterprise. Now, in that enterprise, when the key stakeholders, Britain, Spain, Italy, Germany, France, realized that this thing cannot continue anymore, they decided to develop what they call an exit strategy. Like in any project.
Yeah, yeah.
So the exit strategy was finally discussed in detail and endorsed in the Vienna conference. That was that after this particular phase 1 of colonialism, we are now going where these people are beginning to get their own independence. How do we continue to do business in Africa?
Yeah, yeah.
How do we continue to do business in Asia? But we are going to keep to Africa, we're going to keep to East Africa and the Horn, like you suggested.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make, and which is very important, Aine, is that when you are seeking solutions, especially in conflict, I already told you that one theory is that the length a conflict takes, the rehabilitation recovery period
should take the same length,
almost the same length, or even slightly longer. So there are already people who are frustrated with the pace at which Southern Sudan is moving.
It's recovering.
Yes. They are going to be more frustrated because these are theories grounded in science, in study. So there is going to be no amount of trying to rush these countries. Just to speak a little bit to some of the nuances you're trying to raise. For instance, we know that the Ugandan army ran and has deployed in Southern Sudan. And it is not the first time they have done. And it's not going to be the last. Because this problem is not yet going away.
So any other person would ask, is it a peace resolution? Is it a peacemaking army deployment in South Sudan, or it is more of facilitating the status quo, the leadership structure that is there, that is present in South Sudan?
Well, I'm going to explain that to you once we get there. But for now, I can tell you that it's only the people who deployed who know. First of all, they secretly deployed. For any ordinary observer, and for those of us in the know, we really know that what this deployment amounts to interference with the sovereign territory, especially if you're looking at it in the lens of post-Vienna. So, just to backtrack a bit, because I want to build that context, then I move you to what is going on. So, I told you that there is a difference between a nation and a nation state. Now, they are already nations. We already had nations. The African nations, in their and some had polities. Now, a nation can be a group, a particular group or ethnic group with different tribes. But they only get to be known as a polity when they actually begin to build advance political, economic, and social structures. Like, for instance, one we know, the Buganda Kingdom, the Bunyoro Kingdom. These were, and the same in Southern Sudan. So you find that in this particular conflict, the dominant groups are the Nuer and the Dinka tribes. There is also the Morobi tribe. Now, what happens is that the challenges Southern Sudan is facing now is simply a manifestation of unresolved issues. Before the agreement, before the Nairobi Accords, and then what they also later on agreed after independence. Because you see, conflict is in stages. Remember, there were many different groups fighting the Khartoum government. The group of the late Garang only emerged as the dominant group. But there are other groups, including the first Vice President Riek Machar. He had his own group.
So
because he comes from the Nuer tribe, who are geographically located in the Upper Nile, quite far away, these are the lake states, quite far away from where the capital is in Juba. And as a nation, as a people, they're already having their own challenges because they live close to a subgroup of the Dinka. Okay? The Nuer have their own history that we cannot go into now. But one of the main features is that they already have a problem stemming from the past as two different groups. One does crop and a bit of animal, who are the Nuer. Meanwhile, the Dinka groups are typical pastoralist tribes with roaming animals. So there have already been tensions.
But because there is also a diversity in culture.
But here the key thing is production relations, what you'd call. So other people plant their crops, they're complaining, you are grazing your animals in their land. I told you about water being the future center of conflict. With climate change coming, we are now having forced migrations arising from climate change. So there are a number of underlying causes. That's the point I want to make. But we are now seeing these key issues manifest in the politics, what you call the polity. So there are these now champions who have come to the national stage. You have Garang. You have Garang, who is now the late. Now you have Riek Machar, and then you have Salva Kiir. Now, somehow our politics African politics has continued to have undertones of tribe, religion, and otherwise, even when it comes to the national stage. So what we are seeing happening, and that is why I was emphasizing the background, is not something new. For somebody to have clear answers, clear interventions, you need to understand this history correctly. Or otherwise, where you are supposed to give aspirin, you would be giving chloroquine.
You will administer long medication to a long problem.
Yes. So, fast forward, 2013, okay? A government is formed. First of all, remember that Garang died unceremoniously.
In a plane crash.
So he left. He did not have a time. He didn't even have a little time to get past the preamble of his revolutionary strategy. Then Southern Sudan ends up with these two gentlemen of diverse background. Salva Kiir, a seasoned soldier and general, and probably not as much schooled in formal education as Riek Machar. Dr. Riek Machar is a scientist and engineer who picked his PhD in 1981. He is an intellectual of global status. He has been in the revolution. He is a real force to reckon with because at one time, he was fighting with his own army, fighting against Khartoum. There is even a time he chose to collaborate with Khartoum Riek Machar has ever been a minister in the Khartoum government.
Yeah.
So all this background.
So I want us, before we go to a break within I think that should be 4 minutes time. I want us to discuss the interesting inner politics of, for example, Riek Machar. There was an agreement that I think that should be the ARCSS, ARCSS, that to a certain extent said that there should be more of like the emerging of the armies, which also actually applies to the Sudan question, not even South Sudan itself. So why is the faction of Riek Machar so disgruntled to this point? Is it an economical issue? Because you realize that also, I think Salva Kiir has also been trying to pay off his political position or patronage through the money that has been coming from the oil, but also because of the war in Sudan, now the pipeline was cut off. What does that speak to?
Okay, I'll start by telling you that that is a very, very complex situation in the conflict in Southern Sudan and the politics of Southern Sudan. And it is something that needs to be looked at again and again and factored. Now, there are bits of the revitalized agreement that I will try to highlight, and probably just about 3 or 4 of them that creates the situation we are seeing now. But I want to first point out that ideologically, in terms of conceptual frameworks, the two gentlemen come from 2 different backgrounds. One is predominantly a self-made general, a war hero, who has hardly moved out of Southern Sudan, and that is Salva Kiir.
His current president.
He largely stayed amongst his tribal groups. I think towards the signing of the agreement, the government of Khartoum had really tried to push through a military campaign and was almost decimating the Garang revolution, save for support from Uganda and maybe other Pan-African nations. Riek Machar happened to be one of the commanders who held fort around the territory of Abyei, which we know largely borders Uganda.
Yeah.
So probably the support he was getting from Uganda managed to help him hold. And that does not surprise you that he also has a relationship with Uganda because he's always been around them.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the other man, Dr. Machar, is an accomplished scholar, Western educated intellectual who has over years built contacts with Europe.
Yeah.
He even was married to a Mzungu at one time. So his relationship and contacts with Europe are also vast. So these are 2 people coming from different approaches. I told you that as they were coming out of the Nairobi Accords, there were disagreements. So how they view Abyei, how they view the unresolved questions of the Nairobi Accords is not the same. That is one. So they come with a historical baggage. Then now they're faced with this calamity. Garang dies and they have to form a government. So for some people, Riek Machar was the natural choice, including some international quotas, because he is the go guy.
Yeah.
You know? But you have a seasoned general who is also popular.
Maybe, Doctor, to cut you short, we are headed for a 5 minutes break. But when we come back, I want us to finalize on the internal conflict in South Sudan, but also relate it to the conflict that has been there with Sudan, but also get into a deeper perspective of the Sudan internal politics. Yeah. I think viewers, we shall be back in just a few.
The Center for Policy Analysis is an independent think tank shaping parliamentary democracy, governance, and public policy in Uganda and beyond. Our mission is to shape public policy and strengthen democratic governance by delivering high-quality research, fostering collaboration, and empowering citizens. Our vision is a democratic society with transparent, accountable, and responsive governance systems. What sets SEPA apart? A unique consortium model that integrates expertise from diverse partners for multidisciplinary approaches. We pioneer thought leadership, leveraging tools like artificial intelligence to enhance impact. Through collaborative advocacy, we empower stakeholders to engage with legislative processes, all while combining rigorous research with a deep understanding of Uganda's political economy. Our flagship initiatives include Parliament Watch Uganda, that bridges the gap between the citizens and Parliament, the Policy Digest podcast that explores politics and public affairs across Africa, and the SEPA Convo, our bi-monthly X-Space tackling key public issues. Our work spans parliamentary democracy, human rights, public health, road safety, climate justice, artificial intelligence, and more, including the Africa Regional Conference on Parliament and Legislation. Join SEPA in shaping policies, amplifying voices, and building a democratic future. Visit www.sepa.or.ug to learn more or follow us on social media. The Center for Policy Analysis, a leading public policy think tank.
Welcome back to the second session of this episode. Quickly, Doctor, like we are having a discussion in the short break. Could you kindly, enlighten the viewers on what it means for the war to be sustained, and why necessarily have the regional integration blocs failed? I could say they have failed their member countries and their mandates, but also give us an integrated version of why we should be proud members of certain, regional integrations. For example, South Sudan, IGAD.
You see, there are about three key things at play here. One question would actually be that why is peace and security important for the region? Peace and security is very important for the region, as well as important in the individual countries, because it is a huge guarantee for particularly economic growth and development. I will tell you that, for instance, as a researcher, I moved to many of these places. And even within Kampala here, there are areas where if you visit, you can understand what is happening in this region. I, for instance, right now have one of my offices deliberately. My researchers have an office and they sit down near Arua Park. And in that place, there is, in fact, that is the real center of integration, of the East Africa integration. Because at any one time, if you just went and rounded up some 20 people in any particular spot, it is likely that one will be a Rwandese, another Burundian, another Congolese, another one is South Sudanese.
Yeah.
As we speak today, my friends down there have been telling me that on a daily basis, the movement of goods and services to any of these countries sometimes counts up to about 400 trucks or even 500 in a day.
Interesting. Transiting across borders.
Yes, and I'm still just counting trucks that go through here, Kampala here. But otherwise, there are people who live straight from Mombasa. Right now, if you look at the border in Elegu, trucks are parked for over 6 kilometers, because of uncertainty. So the sheer amount of disruption to trade and services costs these countries a huge, huge, huge burden. South Sudan is particularly important for us as Uganda now, even more than before. Why? For the very first time, I was seeing the last Ministry of Trade midterm report. Our trade with Southern Sudan has even bypassed our trade with Kenya, which has been our most long term. I don't remember the figures very well, but I think it is something in the tune of about, more than $242 or $248 million.
Yeah, I think that could speak to, South Sudan is so much invested in conflict and they are not producing. They are not, whereas Kenya, on the other hand, Kenya has been an industrious nation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So you find that, going back to the point I was trying to build, that the sheer differences between these warring parties, for instance, in this case, Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, are positions that were actually already agreed upon, because when things started going wrong in 2013, and we saw the 2013 conflict, which then saw Riek Machar go into exile, temporary exile, and after a couple of years return from South Africa back into Juba.
Yeah. Mm.
In his own words, and the words of his ministers and colleagues, and people we now have, the group now we largely know as SPLA in opposition. Because remember, after 2010 to 2013, there was just SPLA, SPLM. That was the body that got independence from Khartoum.
Yeah.
Now it is SPLA, SPLM in opposition. There is SPLA, SPLM in government.
Yeah.
Now, these are the arguments that are being put. One is that observers are coming to a conclusion that especially the SPLA, SPLM in government has not fulfilled their promises.
And interestingly, we should be having an election in 2026.
Yes, and that's yes. And that's the most fragile thing, because you see, in any conflict, there are what you call underlying factors and triggers. I've taken a bit of time trying to explain what the underlying factors are.
Yeah.
And in a summary, I've told you it comes with colonial legacy, it comes with the unfinished business of Abyei, it comes because of varying ideologies, because these are fairly two different people.
Ethnicities and governance
yes.
in and of itself.
Then the other bit is basically issues of governance.
Yeah.
Riek Machar has come out and has said that ever since he returned, he literally has been under house arrest.
Yeah.
So in the agreement, the revitalized peace agreement as of 2018, factored in a number of things. One, there were a number of ministries that were supposed to be given to the
SPLA
in opposition.
Yeah.
Now, those, some were given, some have not.
Yeah.
The other thing, which you actually already tried to point out, is the issue of they use an interesting term, but what they are simply trying to say is that they need to try and bring the different warring, what were the militias, towards the unification of the armies, towards both 2010 and after 2013. Now, one fundamental problem, as researchers indicated, is that the context was got wrong. Why was it got wrong? For instance, when it comes to cheer numbers, because you see, you have so many people who have been in the fighting forces. Some, and this is the problem with all situations of, demobilization, reintegration, or disarmament, restoration, reintegration, is that when then do you decide the year, and then also there are also questions of, because you see, an army is a huge organization, and not everybody, for instance, who is in an army has been holding a gun. So even the definition, the challenge of DDR starts from the definition. So if you say only soldiers between 2013 to date, or only fighting forces between 2016 to date, you find that before 2013, there were also militias. For instance, there were militias that were fighting to safeguard their tribes, to safeguard their places against the Khartoum government. But they have not produced political leaders to speak for them. You see, are you seeing the governance question? So you find that in the framing of who comes in, there are people who are left out.
So that was a gap in the 2018 Nairobi Accords.
So, and then it goes down to actual numbers. You see? They are, because you'll then ask, I know, like, for instance, Riek Machar says he had over 200, he says he has over 250,000 soldiers.
And by the numbers of South Sudan, let's say government army, it stretches to 113 something. So and I think that's also a problem. If an opposition or someone you label you have to label a rebel has more army, and this army has to be integrated, then it means you might be overthrown at any time.
No, that's a serious thing. But also even just the fact, because remember, this is a settlement. In an agreement, you have agreed on certain principles. So the agreement can only hold if you can fulfill the conditions of that agreement. So the SPLA in opposition made some demands, on the discussion, and together with the guarantors, because the permanent guarantors in that in this accord of the revitalized peace agreement are the United States of America. I think there is Norway. I think there's South Africa. There are countries like Uganda. There are countries like Kenya. There's actually an agreement monitoring committee, which sits in Sudan. But the point is that Riek Machar and his colleagues in the SPLA-IO have a sense and feeling that Salva Kiir has run away from fulfilling the conditions of the agreement. The much more serious one was that he was supposed to hold elections. And now he has found reason to postpone the elections more than twice. So, one thing that we are not looking at, when a DDR process fails, when you fail to disarm, you fail to demobilize, you fail to reintegrate, it means you have left the fighting forces as they were. So as we are speaking, there is no national army, okay? Because this process only took, it took off just for a little bit, and it collapsed, okay? So that means that those interests and positions still remain.
Maybe, Doctor, to just before we switch or before we carry along to the DRC question, what does that mean for the regional blocs still? Are they fulfilling their mandates? Because there seems to be a much larger interest than international organizations, yet the effects of war are really so much hard-hitting or far-reaching with the immediate neighbors.
Yes, of course. What you say is true, and I think it's something that needs to be taken seriously. Because, governance may look a big and a vague term, but governance translates to very simple things. Basically, how do people get their services? It works through service delivery, both in terms of quantity and quality. I have been reading stories, not once, not twice, in the past few years, of towns, of towns or districts in Uganda that border Southern Sudan. Particularly the areas of West Nile. They feel the impact of refugees more than anyone else. Because the international conventions suggest that when refugees come, after them being welcomed, they should try to live a minimum life that is a semblance of what they have been doing. So if they are school children, they need to continue going to school. So you find the result you find is that you go to a primary school and it's full up to the brim. The classes are not expanding. Or if they are doing very slowly. These people go to the same hospitals. So you find the hospitals crowded. The number of doctors are not increasing. Ever since I started understanding a few civic things, I have always seen this quotation that the access of a Ugandan citizen to a medical doctor is 1 to 25,000. If you translated that in terms of days, it means if a day has 365 days, if you divide it, if you divided that by, so you find that there are many Ugandans who actually go to their grave without ever seeing a doctor in their life.
Medical doctor.
Maybe they just meet a nurse or some clinical officer. And you see, these are things we take for granted. So it is that serious. These are the same people who When you go for firewood, you go to a borehole, you find there is a line from here up to almost 1 kilometer. So that is what it translates to. And these are serious things, because if your citizens are going to be affected in this manner, then probably you need to invest in guaranteeing or facilitating this peace and security. How are you doing your own internal politics? That probably it does not escalate. You know? The other day we sent troops to Southern Sudan. The first person to speak was Ethiopia, which is part of the regional governance, and they think it is not appropriate. They think we are interfering. There are many people who think we are interfering. The Southern Sudanese politicians, and I think that way too, because, for instance, look at what we are just discussing. The issue of, say, for instance, fulfilling the elements of the agreement are basically internal matters. How is Uganda going to contribute, to the discussion to ensure that these parties can agree that, yes, Riek Machar has 250,000 soldiers, so this is so much money you should give him to help him settle his people. These other SPLA are so many. There are other smaller groups who has been recognized, who has not been. So, and we cannot say that we have gone to carry out what you call peace enforcement. We could argue that we went to stem down escalation. But if we went to stem down escalation, we need to have a timetable. When do we go in?
When do we come
When
out?
do we get out? So that there is certainty on either side. Have you seen the timetable anywhere?
Not really. None that I know of.
Actually, there are people who have joked. The other day, a friend of mine who is a researcher at University of Juba was saying, I called to say, hey, can you confirm that the Ugandan troops are in Juba? He laughed and said, I didn't know. Even you, as a senior researcher, you ask wrong question. I said, why? He told me, but have they ever left?
Interesting. because even when you get to social media, you would see the I think it's more about even the deep-seated anger of how the South Sudanese express the UPDF occupation in their country.
Absolutely.
It is not a lousy occupation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Doctor, let's get to the legacy question. On April 7th, 2025 will mark 31 years since the genocide against the Tutsi took place in Rwanda. It claimed over 800,000 Tutsi, but also 2 million refugees who went to neighboring countries. One of those countries that still harbor refugees who are of Rwandan origin is the DRC. Could you speak to what this, the migration bit of how these people who are, I could say the Banyamulenge, who are situated in DRC have exacerbated the kind of conflict and that has led to occupation of M23's occupation of some DRC's state. I could say states.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry. Congo, again, just like Southern Sudan, has a deep history to the conflicts that we see today. And although we may not have the time to go into the history, suffice to say, maybe just in a sentence or two, it is important to always frame these things correctly. The 1994 Rwanda conflict, which now today we largely refer to as the Rwanda genocide is not the start of the challenges of the Rwanda-Congo relationship. President Kagame, who comes after 1994 with his counterpart Kabila Senior in the DR Congo at the time, were not there when the challenge of this group of people that are now known as, are largely referred to as the Francophone people, or the Rwandaphone. I mean, not Francophone, the Rwandaphone speakers. But a very brief, quick history. The actual origin or the manifestation of the challenges of the Rwandaphone people stems from many loose narratives, but one which seems to have been captured well is around the year 1934, or just slightly before that. And again, that goes back to the colonial era. So it again tells you it is always unfinished business that brings us problems. And it always ends up into a governance issue. So the Belgians are in Congo, DR, particularly the Leopold adventure. Now, he had his own fair challenge with the Congolese people, in the native Congolese. But what actually happens at some point is that he takes he is interested in expanding the tea estates in the highlands in Kivu. So they import, for lack of a better word, they encourage migration of the Rwandan people into Congo around that time. But as these people go there, they actually find the indigenous people there, and they find some Congolese. Later on, post-1960, when states begin to get independence, there emerges an issue. The question at that time was, again, because of unresolved political questions, who do you have as a native? Who do you have not as a native? So this issue of the Banyamulenge or the Rwandaphone is a question that the colonialists left behind. It's a question that successive regimes of Congo, right from Mobutu, has been a thorn. Many times Mobutu actually defined citizenship, and the Congo defined citizenship and included the Banyarwanda people. At times, for political reasons, they were excluded. The climax now comes after the conflict of 1996 that brings in Kabila, and then 1998, and then the politics of 2006. But the real thing is that tribes along the border have always created problems for states. This was not helped by the fact that there was a kind of war that we experienced in Rwanda. What has now happened is that you have about three persuasions. One is internal. The Rwandese who have found themselves, the Rwandese who were indigenous in Congo, those who went there after many years, and then those who have gone in lately. All are struggling to try and ensure that they are recognized as proper citizens. Can benefit, take the full benefit of being citizens, including questions of land and questions of politics. Rwanda Rwanda post 1994 with Kagame is also having its own governance challenges.
Yeah.
And probably some of the critique against Kagame is that they have framed the Rwanda question in a manner that after the fleeing of the Hutu, the politics has been designed in a manner that it is not allowing the Hutu come back to Rwanda. It has been like a policy to contain them where they are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That is in relation to the Rwanda politics.
Yeah.
But also along the way, there is no doubt that the economics, the political economy of Congo, that presents it as a land of plenty with all the minerals, has attracted many players, including Rwanda.
Yeah.
So that and other issues basically form some kind of smoke ball that present a very difficult situation for the geopolitics of East Africa and the Horn.
Yeah. Sure.
And it will not surprise you that this is a situation that is going to continue for a long time, unless we dive deep into the historical questions and try to solve them at that point. So what ought to happen is that Rwanda internally needs to address its political question correctly, including having an expanded political platform where even the Hutu can come back and play a role as citizens. Congo has to soul search deeply and ensure that their politics is expanded to include the Rwandaphone. And the key is understanding the timelines and coming up with laws and policies that are fairly accommodative. Because otherwise the question of who is Rwandese and who is not Rwandese will always emerge.
Sure.
And they need to be aware. And particularly for Congo, it's difficult because it's already a weakened state.
Yeah.
Government presence is low because of the presence of the mineral, because of international trade and contacts. Arguably, the Rwandaphone speaking people in the Kivus, especially in Goma, in Bukavu, have amassed a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
They now own land. They are educated. They're now politically cautious.
I think,
and they are going to continue demanding.
Yeah, and I think that also speaks to the witch hunt they have faced, maybe from the native Congolese.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your time. But the key takeaway really is there's so much unfinished business and the political questions that have brought us the conflict situation that we are in as a region. And I hope you keep doing what you're doing, keep doing the research. We are here to read, and I think the people responsible are also taking note. This has been an engaging and insightful conversation. Thank you for coming. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. For the viewers, if you have to catch us on this Policy Digest, please, you have to get to your YouTube. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Podbean. But you can also find the snippets of this on TikTok. Thank you so much for viewing, and please continue to subscribe on all our platforms. And see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.